In the last episode of Succession War Explained, we talked about the Silent Majority user, an unknown party who's killed 7 guards for unknown reasons. But honestly, these guards who got killed were a bunch of no-nen-no-and nobodies, so whoever that mystery killer is, they haven't actually changed the course of the war that much with their attacks. Maybe they'll do that later. But in today's video, we're going to be talking about Kaiser, and his choice of targets is not so modest. He says he wants to kill all of the higher-ranking princes at once. That would be a big enough deal on its own, but as we dig deeper, we'll find it's only the first of 3 great massacres he's got planned. Well, I say he, but Kaiser's being manipulated by an unknown party for an unknown purpose. So, as with Silent Majority, we've got to try and guess who's pulling the strings behind this marionette. To get there, we need to get caught up on Kacho and Fugetsu's escape attempt, review everything we know about Kakin's Justice Bureau, and use the evidence we've got to find the mastermind behind it all. If Detective Melody can't crack the case, maybe we can't either, but we've seen some things she hasn't, so it's worth a shot. Now, before we begin, I want to quickly acknowledge that my videos have been getting way more attention than I ever expected, so thanks for watching, thanks for arguing with me in the comments, sincerely, that's been a lot of fun. Hit the usual YouTube buttons if you want to help out the channel, and yeah, that's it. Let's get this underway. Kacho and Fugetsu are the 10th and 11th princes of Kakin, and the daughters of Seiko, queen number 6. Unlike the rest of their siblings, these sisters actually love each other. Each one's primary concern in the war is to try and save the other's life, and Kacho makes their alliance explicit during the very first banquet. Outwardly, Kacho is a pushy, spoiled brat, but Melody Super Sleuth spots right away that it's all an act. As she comes to realize, Kacho's been deliberately losing favor with her own guards so that they'll prioritize Fugetsu over her if they have to pick one to save. So from the moment she got on the boat, and maybe long before, Kacho's been doing everything she can think of to protect her little sister. It's no surprise Melody wants to save this girl, and it's no surprise her guardian beast turns out the way it does, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's talk about Fugetsu's beast first. Its ability lets Fugetsu summon a magic tunnel that mimics a game that the sisters used to play. Kacho would always let her decide where they were going to travel in their imagination, so it's Fugetsu who opens the departing door to her destination of choice, and then Kacho who opens the returning door. The cooperative nature of this ability shows us how much Fugetsu relies on her big sister. It's very cute. Fugetsu vows to save Big Sis with her magic worm, runs some experiments, and winds up on tier 3 in the hands of Mezaistum. So the sisters want to escape, Melody wants to help them, and Mezaistum wants to help them too. His man calls up Melody and tells her, hey, you and Kini definitely shouldn't let those two make any escape attempts, but the numbers disguised as the time of the call are a code to reveal his real order, which is get them out of there. Melody and Kini get the message loud and clear, and both hunters play their part in the escape. At the end of the Sunday banquet, Melody puts all of tier 1 in a trance with her music, and Kini uses this time to get the girls onto a lifeboat. He also writes a note taking sole responsibility for this kidnapping and takes his own life, making himself a scapegoat so that Melody and the princes themselves won't be blamed. But despite Kini's sacrifice, the escape is doomed. We discover that you can't just leave the boat. Maybe there's some way to break the succession war by having a prince withdraw from the contest like Kurapika hoped, but you're not going to do it like this if these ghostly hands have anything to say about it. Fugetsu tunnels her way back to the Black Whale and she thinks Kacho's with her, but tragically, her big sister died to get Fugetsu through the door. All that's left is what I'm going to call Kacho Beast, Kacho's guardian beast taking on her form to stick around in the war and help protect Fugetsu however it can. By the way, while Fugetsu doesn't know yet that Kacho is dead, everyone else does, so we can assume that another boat was sent out to recover the body. Don't worry about there being a missing prince for the creepy sarcophagi room. All corpses are accounted for. And everyone also knows that Melody just got up on stage and played a song so enthralling that they couldn't even move for its duration. She's pretty much just advertised herself as a method for musical mass murder. So Melody now wants to make up for her part in Kacho's death by saving Fugetsu no matter what, but she's also a super weapon in high demand among the elder princes, and you can't just ignore a summons from First Prince Benjamin. Luckily, who should be on hand to help but Kaiser from the Justice Bureau, and he's got a solution for both problems. Keeping Fugetsu in detention keeps her safely out of the war, and keeping Melody in detention keeps her away from Benjamin, who would have immediately used her to set up a massacre. Kaiser's a real lifesaver. Thank goodness he's here. Wait, he also wants to set up a massacre. Huh. Wait, who is this guy again? Whoever he is, and whoever he's working for, they've suddenly got the melody monopoly, and if they set up another broadcast, they could purge all of their enemies at once and win the succession war in 3 bloody minutes. And hey, if they actually pulled it off, I'm sure some of you would be happy. That's one way to speed up the storyline. So the force behind Kaiser is the force we want to identify, both because they're kinda close to winning this whole thing, and because whoever they are, they've got Fugetsu and Melody in their clutches. And personally, I don't want to see them die. Before we get the speculation going, let's review everything we've got on Kaiser himself and the judicial branch of Kakin, which he works for. That's right, we're gonna have to put the judges on trial here. Did they ever put the judge on trial in Ace Attorney? They probably should have. Kaiser enters our story as a direct result of Silent Majority killing Berrigan. And that's the connection. It was all planned, they've been working together the whole— Nah, I'm just kidding. So, when Berrigan is killed on the first day of the Nen class, Lowberry's the one acting all suspicious and drawing everyone's attention towards a doll no one else could see, and Zhongli's guard Sakata formally accuses her of the murder. Supreme Magistrate Cleopatra rejects the idea of charging Queen Seiko, Lowberry's boss, since there's no real evidence, but she agrees to send an investigator from the Justice Bureau to hang around Seiko for 3 days as a formality. That investigator is Kaiser. Cleopatra is running Kakin's judicial branch on the Black Whale, and Kaiser's her employee. So if we want to know who's behind Kaiser, this is an easy one for the suspect list. It could just be his boss. So Kaiser's there when Kacho gets the escape scheme rolling, and he's there when Mezaistum escorts Fugetsu back up to her room from Tier 3. Here's the first thing he does that I want to highlight. He says he's managed to work it so Fugetsu's not in confinement for her escape attempt and will just be under surveillance instead. And then he tells them that there will be a window with no surveillance during the banquet. So one, why would Kaiser and or the Justice Bureau not maintain this surveillance during the banquet? And two, why would he tell them about the lapse in surveillance well in advance so they can plan around it? It seems like he already knows about their plan somehow, or at least he's encouraging them to come up with a plan very much like it. It's like he's saying, please, go right ahead, show me what you can do. We also get a peek in this scene at Kaiser's emotions, or lack thereof. When Melody plays to convince Seiko to set up the tier-wide broadcast, Seiko has a strong emotional reaction to the music, but Kaiser offers a dispassionate comment about the interpretation choices Melody made with the piece. Now, to be fair, some people are just like that. Even if they enjoy something, they have that sort of distance from it, so they'll go, that was a really funny joke, instead of, laughing. But Melody is a world-class musician, and this is all she got out of him. It's not conclusive, but it's the sort of thing that would make sense if we found out that Kaiser's emotional responses weren't normal because he was being manipulated. And immediately after this, Kaiser talks to Melody and she suspects that he's being manipulated. The sound of his heart runs in opposition to what he's saying. He's feeding her these corny lines about how inspired he is, words can change the world, he wants to do his part, etc. But he doesn't have the heartbeat of someone who's just been inspired. Instead, it's a robotic flatline. He concludes with this nervous sounding bit of flirtation with Melody, but still, inhumanly regular heartbeat. This isn't just Melody being shocked that someone would flirt with her, and it's not just Kaiser being unusually repressed with his emotions. Melody specifically says she's known people like that, and this isn't even close. Something is really wrong here, and her mind goes straight to Nen manipulation. And we should make note of the timing. Kaiser was already manipulated before Melody revealed what her ability can do. We don't have some outsider manipulating him after the banquet to get at Melody now that her value is known. That brings us up to the escape, after which Kaiser detains Melody. She's grateful because this keeps her out of Benjamin's reach, but Kaiser also drops this line about how the princes might be thinking the same thing he is. We'll find out soon enough what he's thinking. It's a massacre using Melody's ability, and from this point on, he's got Melody. He tries again to lock her down with his smooth lines, but throughout his big love confession, he's still got the robot heartbeat, so it's obvious that none of these words are sincere. Melody speculates that he's working for one of the princes that didn't request a meeting with her, and then we follow Kaiser as he has a quick chat with Steiner from the IPA. This guy was introduced all the way back in 341, and we haven't talked about him yet, so it's time for a quick Steiner sidebar. He's the secretary of the IPA, the International Permit Agency, which has authority over any trip to the Dark Continent and is backed by V5. When Nasubi and Beyond outmaneuvered V5 and made a DC trip inevitable, it was Steiner who suggested that they save face by letting Kakin join up and form V6. Steiner's one of the only people who know about the calamities brought back from earlier DC expeditions, and we're told over and over that he's the most valuable agency man on the Black Whale. As a high-level representative of the world government, he has to survive as a witness to Beyond's successful voyage. So Steiner's real purpose lies after the switch to Morrel's boat when the real DC trip gets underway, but in the meantime he's working with Kakin's Justice Bureau in their criminal investigation department. It's just like how Kurapika has one job on the Black Whale and then another job waiting for him after. And we see Steiner working with the Justice Bureau when they arrest Hulkenberg as part of Balsamico's plot to split him up from his followers. So, very important guy, he's walking around thinking about Brion and Pap, but he's working for the Justice Bureau. That's Steiner. Like I was saying, Kaiser has a chat with Steiner which is very revealing. He says he's concerned about the army declaring a state of emergency and pulling a coup on the rest of Kakin's government, including the judicial branch. He warns that everyone high-ranking would be executed in a kangaroo court, leaving no competition for Benjamin's takeover. To prevent that, Kaiser wants Steiner to use his authority as a V6 rep to declare that the Justice Bureau is the supreme authority in a state of emergency instead. Supposedly that would be the best option since the Justice Bureau is this totally neutral party. But notice what Kaiser says. It must be able to act unilaterally in this crisis. So it's not just about keeping this supreme power away from Benjamin, it's about giving it to the Justice Bureau instead. And with unilateral power, the Bureau would be able to run their own kangaroo court and execute whoever they want. Kaiser's totally full of it when he says it's a 1 in 10,000 chance that this will come up. If a state of emergency will give him and his boss unlimited power, they have every reason to make sure that's exactly what does happen. Alright, 2 takeaways. 1, Kaiser definitely isn't working for Benjamin, and 2, this is the second scheme in this chapter that could result in a massive, uncontested purge of anyone Kaiser doesn't like. And it's not a coincidence that the 2 schemes fit together. All the top princes dying to poison with the Melody scheme would be an ideal pretext to declare a state of emergency, at which point authority would be concentrated in the Justice Bureau, and then they could execute anyone who's left standing between them and their goals. It's not just a play to kill some princes, it's a play to overthrow the government and put the judges on top. But Melody's not willing to play her part in the plan just yet. She believes that someone has cursed Fugetsu as a way of coercing her, that is coercing Melody, into joining their side and being their superweapon. Melody meets with the princes and the representatives of the princes who are trying to get a hold of her, but none of them respond to her hint about a negotiation, so none of them seem to be the blackmailer. And since Kaiser clearly wants to make this banquet plan happen, it's probably not him, since this is getting in the way of that. As long as Fugetsu's being threatened, Melody will insist that that's priority 1, she won't help with the banquet massacre, a state of emergency won't be declared, and the Justice Bureau won't take over everything. So, sorry Fugetsu, but it's for the best that you stay like this a little while longer while we try and figure all this out. Hang in there, kid. So, who's behind Kaiser and this whole plot for a judicial coup? As we already identified, Cleopatra was an obvious choice. She's his boss, and if the judges take over, she's the top dog. But since we know nothing about Cleopatra, saying it's her just kicks the can down the road. Like, okay, Cleopatra or one of her agents is manipulating Kaiser to set all of this up, but for what ultimate purpose? Is it just to let Cleopatra herself take over the country, maybe with Fugetsu left standing as an easily controlled puppet king? That does fit what we know so far, but there's no meat to this theory. We've hit a wall here unless there's someone behind Cleopatra. So let's suppose the judges are just the instruments of our real mastermind, who should be someone we actually know something about, like, say, one of the princes vying for the throne. Well, let's take a look. It's not first Prince Benjamin. It's probably not Princes 3, 4, 5, or 7, since, like Benjamin, they're all trying to get at Melody while she's being held in detention, unless they're making a futile attempt as a deliberate smokescreen. None of this seems to be Tyson's style, and the scheme was already moving before Hulkenberg awakened and joined the war. None of the younger kids are capable of putting this together, so the only prince we've got left to consider is Cammy. Camilla does spray some rounds at Benjamin without really facing punishment for it in court, so she's worth a look as a potential co-conspirator. First, I'll say the obvious. Camilla's guardian beast is a manipulator, and Kaiser's being manipulated. That's a match, but we know Cammy a little bit, and I just don't think she's hatching schemes this subtle. I mean, she sprayed some rounds at Benjamin. There was no big plan there, she was just hoping Benjamin would kill her and activate the kitty cat. A long-term plan to beat Unma by getting loyal agents into the judicial branch might fit Dwazel, but she's not outwardly cooperating with Camilla in the war, so she wouldn't be able to use this manipulator beast for the purpose. this. And besides, I strongly suspect Camilla's beast manipulates its targets into doing something more specific and immediate than what we're seeing with Kaiser. So if it's Dwazil, Cammy's got nothing to do with it, and besides having a motive to take down Benjamin, there's not much about this that sticks to the second queen. While we're looking at queens, it's natural to take a look at Fugetsu's mother Seiko, since ostensibly the Kaiser scheme helps Fugetsu. Seiko does want to rule through a weak, malleable Fugetsu, and she's had access to Kaiser since his introduction. So if she's a secret manipulator, maybe that's how she got the chance to start putting things in motion. But here we see Seiko hoping she can get the Justice Bureau to put her in custody, which implies that she doesn't control Kaiser. If she did, she wouldn't be hoping, she would just do it. So not Seiko, probably not Savanti. It could be the third queen, Tang Zhao. At this point, we're kind of running out of meat all over again, because we know nothing about her. Are there any clues about the Justice Bureau that we just missed? Anything left to work with here? Well, yes, actually, there's just one more thing. In Chapter 390, Hinrig learns that the members of the Haley Mafia under Morena Prudo are all registered on the ship Manifest as civilians. This puts the other Mafia families at a disadvantage in the war with Morena, since they can't retaliate against her without running afoul of law enforcement for killing civilians. Hinrig immediately views this as the Justice Bureau doing the Haley a favor. They're looking the other way for Morena's death squad. But this doesn't just affect the balance of power among the Mafia families and enable a bunch of psycho killers. It gets worse. The full consequences of the Justice Bureau doing this favor for the Haley are spelled out for us by Serednik's school buddies in 394. They believe that these civilian deaths of Haley members will trigger a crackdown on the Mafia by the Kakin army, along with the Hunter Association and the Justice Bureau. And they think the Mafia would respond to that crackdown by rallying all the passengers on the lower decks, who massively outnumber both the army and the residents of Tiers 1 and 2. So just by dying, these members of Haley are bringing about an apocalyptic war between the lower and upper tiers. Nasubi said the boat was packed with 200,000 sacrifices, and if this war breaks out, that's exactly what they're gonna be. All because the Justice Bureau played along with these bogus civilian registrations. So that's mass murder plot number 3. In order of ascending body count, we've got the poisoning, the coup, and the full-scale revolution. It's starting to look like what the Justice Bureau wants more than anything is death, kinda like Morena Prudo. Everything they do benefits her, and since they let the civilian registrations slide before Morena actually took power over the Haley, it even seems like they knew about Morena's takeover before it happened. Remember, being signed up as civilians proves that the Haley want an all-out war, but they've only wanted an all-out war since after Morena's bloodbath, which took place after they got on board. The Justice Bureau did her this favor knowing what Morena would do and wanting to help her out when she did it. So either they're loyal to her and her kill everyone now agenda, or they're helping her because all this death suits their own purposes and Morena's just a great way to make it happen. That would mean we're looking for someone who benefits from a giant massacre, and at this point it's pretty hard to say. Beyond scheme? Periston scheme? World government scheme to destroy Kakin and go from V6 back down to V5 so they don't need to print new business cards? Or could it be King Nasubi himself, deliberately creating a crisis that threatens the whole ship in order to test the fitness of the future king? Now, I won't pretend I can prove the whole case against Nasubi, but I'll explain my thought process before we wrap up. When Mezaistam is making up a story to explain the Haley killings to the army, he says a large-scale ritual sacrifice is just a traditional part of the seed urn ceremony. So what if he was right by accident and all this death was an intended part of the succession war all along? Nasubi did tell us way in advance that the people on the lower decks would be sacrifices for the war, and the only way to guarantee that that would happen, that the war would break containment and cause mass casualties on the lower decks, is to set it up yourself. And note that a pre-existing plan like this fits with Kaiser already being manipulated before Melody showed what she could do. That would explain him secretly supporting Morena by using the Justice Bureau, and it would also explain why the Black Whale was built with a secret hideout for Morena on Tier 2. Remember, Nasubi built the boat. Her secret headquarters didn't construct themselves. How would she even know about this secret base if Nasubi hadn't told her to begin with? And Tier 2, where the base is located, is also the location of the Justice Bureau, so for all we know, it's tucked safely away in there. So yeah, the evidence we've got suggests that this is all Nasubi's plan to simulate a nation-threatening catastrophe and make sure his successor can rise to the challenge. The ship of state needs a pilot who can weather a storm. Here's the storm. Good luck, kids. So, what have we learned? Well, the Kakin Justice Bureau wants a mass poisoning of the princes, they want to take over the government in a V6 approved coup, and they want a revolutionary war that threatens the whole ship. They're either agents of Morena, or they're using her to create a crisis on the Black Whale to suit someone else's purpose. In the short term, Kaiser's next order of business will be to try and handle this attack on Fugetsu so that Melody can play at the Sunday banquet, enable the poison plot, and justify the coup. And Melody will do it in the hopes of protecting Fugetsu and atoning for the sister that she let die. The only light at the end of this tunnel is the suggestion here that Kurapika's finally going to get involved. If there's anyone who can get Melody out of this and prevent the chain of massacres, it's probably him, right? And he doesn't have that much else going on right now. Little conspiracy like this, I'm sure he can make time to sort it all out, no sweat. So that's where this story thread leaves off. For the next video, why don't we switch gears and talk about someone who wants to fill the boat with love? It's time to cover Prince Tyson, and I think I can squeeze in Prince Mariam as well. They've both been keeping to themselves for the most part, so this should be more of a chill recap before we move on to the real heavy hitters. But Tyson and Mariam deserve attention too. I'm not gonna skip a prince just because I don't have some grand conspiracy about them, that just wouldn't be right. So I hope you look forward to it, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.